In this coordinate geometry lesson, we will look at plotting points on the Cartesian plane. In our last lesson, we looked at identifying the x and the y-axis, as well as identifying the 4 quadrants on the Cartesian plane. To plot points on a number plane, we first need to understand what an ordered pair is. So in a simple form, ordered pair is like an address of where a building is. So you might be seeing a point sitting right here, and we want to give it some numbers or coordinates to say that the point is sitting on a specific place. And so an ordered pair is used to specify the position of a point on a number plane. Now the ordered pair always takes the form of x and y that is separated by a comma surrounded by parentheses. So for example, I have point A and point B. Point A has the coordinates 1 and 3. Point B has the coordinates 4 and -3. We can have any number as a coordinate. We can have a positive number or a negative number. One thing that does not change is that the first number you see is always the x coordinate. And the second number that you see after the comma, it is always the y coordinate. So for point A, the x is the 1 and the 3 is the y. For B, the x coordinate is the 4 and the -3 is the y coordinate. And so knowing this, we're ready to plot them on the plane. Now, when you see a plane, I always start by labeling the axis. So you remember that the horizontal one going from left to right here, this is called the x-axis. And the vertical one going up and down, this is called the y-axis. Do you remember where the origin O is? The origin is where the two axes meet and intersect. So the y is coming down this way and the x is going this way, and the point that it meets and intersects is right over here in the middle. So this is called the origin. When you plot points, here is the steps that you need to follow. First, you always start at the origin. So you'll see my laser pointer here. We start here first. Then we look at the x coordinate. So I'm looking at point A. I want to plot A, and so I'm looking at my x coordinate, and it is 1. What that means is I need to be plotting on an x-axis. Any positive number, I need to move to the right along the x, and any negative number, I need to move towards the left. With a y, it's a 3 given here. If it's a positive number, I need to be moving upwards. And if it's a negative y, like the one on B, I need to be moving downwards. So knowing this, I'm ready to plot. So let's plot A first. My A coordinate is 1 for the x and 3 for the y. It means that I start at the origin, then I need to move one step along the x. Because 1's a positive 1, I need to move one step towards the right. So I'm sitting here at the moment where my pointer is. Then I need to be moving upwards along the y 3 steps. I'm not moving downwards because this is a positive y. So I'm still on the 1 on the x, and I need to be moving 3 up. Now, here is my final destination, and so I need to be plotting right here. So here is point A, and point A is 1 and 3. Let's plot B now. B has the x coordinate of a 4 and the y coordinate of a -3. So always starting at the origin, step 2 would be to plot on the x, and step 3 would be to plot on the y. And so starting at the origin, I'm right here. I need to be moving 4 steps on the x. +4, so it means I need to move towards the right 4 steps right here. So I'm sitting here at the moment. I'm not done yet because I need to plot my y coordinate, which is a -3. So -3 along the y does not go up because that's positive. Negative on the y needs to go down 3 steps. So I was sitting on the 4 on the x before, and I need to be moving 3 steps downwards. And so here is my endpoint, and I need to plot right here where it is 4 and -3. Right there. And this is called B, and it is 4 and -3. And here is how you would plot points on the number plane. Let's take a look at the practice questions together. On the same set of axes, we're going to plot the following points. So we will be plotting A to F, these 6 points, on the same plane. To do that, we first need to label the axes. So the one that goes horizontal from left to right, this is called the X. And we know that the one that goes vertical is called Y. Next thing we need to know is that looking at the coordinates right here, the first number that we see is always the X coordinate, followed by a comma and Y coordinate. The steps of plotting points is, number 1, we start at the origin. Then we either need to go left or right on the x-axis. And lastly, we either need to go up or down on the y-axis. So knowing this, we're ready to plot these 6 points. First one, we have A. On the x, it is 2. The y coordinate is 5. Both of them are positive numbers. So we start at the origin. Then on the x, we need to move 2 steps positive. So we're moving 2 steps towards the right. Then on the y, we need to move 5, and this is positive. So we need to move up 5 from the 2 on the x. So we're moving up 5. So we have to plot right here where the x is a 2 and the y is a 5. Right here, and this is point A, and it is 2 and 5. Point B, we have x, that is 4, and y coordinate, that is -2. So on the x, we're starting at the origin. Then on the x, we're moving 4 to the right. Then with the y, it is a -2. So it means that we need to move 2 downwards. So this is where point B is. And so if I were to connect the 4 on the x and the -2 on the y, this is where it meets, and this is point B, and it has the coordinates 4 and -2. Point C has the coordinates -5, the x coordinate, and the y coordinate is a 0. So starting on the origin, we have to move 5 steps on the x, and it's a -5, so we are going to go to the left, -5. So here is where I am. Then the y coordinate is a 0. That means we cannot move up or down when y is 0. When y is 0, it means we need to stay where we are. So we're staying here where the x is -5. This is where the y is 0. So the third point, C, would be right here. And so this is C, and the coordinates are -5 and 0. Point D has the coordinates x is -1 and y is -4. So starting at the origin, I need to move 1 towards the left because it's a -1. Then I need to move 4 downwards because it's a -4. So right here, I'm moving 4 downwards. So here is my point D. And so if I were to connect them from the -1 on the x and the -4, here is D. And it is -1 and -4. Point E has the x coordinate -2 and the y coordinate of 3. So starting at the origin, I need to be moving -2 on the x. So moving to the left, -2, I'm right here. Then 3 on the y, it means move up 3 because it's a +3, so I am right here. So this is point E. Right here where the -2 and the +3 mate, this is point E, and it is -2 followed by +3. And last one, F. X is 0 and y is 3. Now, starting at the origin, here I am. The x is 0, so I cannot move towards the left or towards the right because x is 0, it means I need to stay where I am. So I'm staying here for the x. Then y says I need to move up 3 because the y coordinate for point F is +3. So from here, 0, where the x is, I need to move up 3. So this would be where F is. So I'm just going to use a different color. Here, the red dot, this is F, where the x coordinate is 0 and the y is 3. So here is how you can plot points with the given coordinates. Here we have the 5 coordinates P, Q, R, S, and T already plotted on the number plane. What we're going to do is we're going to find out where they're sitting and state the coordinates. So remember that the coordinates start with the x followed by the y. So we want to identify the coordinates for P, for Q, for R, S, and T. So let's begin with P. Point P is sitting right here. What we're going to do is we're going to extend vertically and horizontally to see the coordinates. You can see that the P, when we extend vertically, it's sitting on the 4. And this is on the x-axis. So it means that the x coordinate for P is 4. Let's also label the axis to make it clearer. So I'm going to call this y and this is the x. And going back to the P, point P right here, extending towards the y-axis, we see that on the y is sitting on the 2. So it means that the y coordinate is 2. So that means that point P, the coordinates are 4 and 2. Let's check for point Q. We have point Q right here. And if we were to extend vertically and horizontally, we see that first, where it touches the x-axis is the x coordinate, and we see that this is -1. So for Q, x coordinate is -1, and for the y, where it extends, it passes through -3 on the y. So the y coordinate is -3. For point R, right here, Once again, extend until it touches the axis. And where it passes through the x is a 3. So the x coordinate for r is 3. And where it passes through the y is a -1. And so the y coordinate for r is -1. For point S, we see it right here. So let's extend both vertically and horizontally to see where it passes through the x and the y axis. On the x-axis, we see that it is -2. So the x-coordinate for point S is -2. On the y, we'd see it passing through the 5, and so the y-coordinate is 5. And lastly, for point T, once again, extend both vertically and horizontally. And on the x, we see that it passes through +7, so 7 is the x-coordinate. And on the y, we can see that it passes through -3. And so -3 is the y-coordinate. Now, do you remember the 4 quadrants? The first quadrant is the one right here. Then it goes anti-clockwise, and so quadrant 2 would be the one on the left. Quadrant 3 would be the one down below, quadrant 2. And lastly, quadrant 4 would be the one that is below quadrant 1. So if you get asked a question, which points lie on quadrant 1? That means look at quadrant 1. Which points are sitting on it? And the answer would be point P is on quadrant 1. Which points are in quadrant 2? The answer is point S is sitting on quadrant 2. Which point is sitting on quadrant 3? Point Q is. And lastly, you see that both point R and T are in quadrant 4. Next lesson, we will look at plotting points from a table of values. Thanks for watching. Follow me for more.